Welcome to Mixology, the intersection of customer education and customer marketing. I'm Kristine Cookich, and along with Shannon Howard, we'll talk about how customer education and customer marketing are the scale engines of customer success. Glad you could join us. When we talk about mixology, thoughts go to drinks, bartenders, good friends, and good conversation. That's what we want to do here, is have good conversations. So in each session, we'll introduce a mixed concoction for you to enjoy while you listen. This session brings the Negroni, a classic that stands with the Martini and the Manhattan. The tools you'll need for this are simple: a large glass filled with ice to mix the ingredients, a sieve, and a mixing spoon to stir. No need to shake. The ingredients are also simple: 1 ounce of gin, 1 ounce of Campari, and 1 ounce of dry vermouth for the drink, a bit of orange peel to garnish, and you'll serve it all over ice. To mix the drink, pour the gin, Campari, and vermouth in a tall glass filled with ice. Use the mixing spoon to mix everything together and chill it all up. Pour the liquid into a rocks glass with some ice cubes, and that's it. Back. Today's topic, we're going to talk go to market, right? Today is all about what does go to market mean and all of the cool pieces that are associated with it. So let's start there. What does go to market mean to you, Shannon?
That's a great question. I know we were talking before we were rolling on the video, just around how it's one of those terms we use a lot. It means a lot of different things to different people. So probably good to give our own interpretation of that. To me, go to market is when you have something that you're going to be bringing to your audience, whether it's your prospects, your customers, both. How are you getting that out into the world? Who's involved? What's the message? What's the positioning? What are you trying to communicate to people? What are the channels, avenues, mechanisms that you're using to get it out there, and aligning all of that to be kind of one chorus, one song of whatever that, whether it's a product release or community launch or whatever it is. How are you kind of bringing that to the market? What about for you, Kristine?
I think that part of it plus, right? It's the thing that I see most often is we forget sometimes about the people who are already here. So as we focus on go to market, we see the application of that out to the wide world. It's a social media and webinars and emails to whatevers. And we sometimes forget that the audience that we have internally, whether that's internal people or our existing customers, the message needs to be a little bit different, right? It needs to be tweaked for them. It doesn't need to be here's who we are as an organization. This is what makes this new thing so very special. And here's how you can, get more information about this cool new thing. Mm-hmm. And when we are focused on those other audiences, we can sometimes skip some of those other pieces, right? We don't need to go into nearly as much detail about, for example, who we are. Maybe they already work with us here, and so they should probably know who we are. Or their customers, right? We can hope, or their customers. And we should have an established relationship with them, right? So we don't need to go into too much detail about who we are, but we do need to give them the reasons why, right? The reasons, that's the reasons that we exist, customer marketing and customer education, right? It's the reasons why these things are important. And that is where I think go to market is unique on this side, right? When we talk about these two arms, because they're both integral to getting the information to the right people, right? Marketing and education.
Totally. So I like what you're thinking about internally, because so often go-to-market teams can be a little siloed in thinking about the customer, the prospect, both. And then we don't bring the rest of the organization along for the ride of what did we build? Why did we build it? What is the story that we're trying to tell? And we're not all using that same language. And then we find that people kind of come up with their own interpretation of how they should be talking about something. They come up with what works for them or what makes sense to them. And it's not really that same unified voice that we're at the same story that we're trying to tell. And so I think thinking about how do we communicate internally and how do we educate internally on what this thing is and what it does and how it works is so important. And I do think this is where customer education and customer marketing plays such a huge role in that go to market is I think we are those people who think about the internal aspect of things and can maybe translate things internally.
Do we think then that the terminology kind of bridges from go to market to enablement?
I think enablement has to be a part of go to market. Because I think of enablement.
Right.
Like,
I agree.
yeah,
I agree.
What's that talk track? How do we make sure we all know what's happening? We're on the same page. But I think often, and we were talking about this earlier, you have product marketing working on sales enablement. So there's materials for them to sell this new product feature, whatever it is. But we don't always give other teams enablement materials. We don't maybe give our customers enablement materials or our customer success team enablement materials. And those are players we want to think about as well, is how do we, I always say, empower and equip people to be successful with whatever it is that we're bringing to market.
And that takes us then to the second piece, right? How do customer marketing and customer education support that go-to-market strategy to those audiences that we've identified?
Well, you tell me, what does that look like for you and your role at TI?
I always, because I come at it from education first, right? I'm always thinking you need to know that why. And that's what education is really good at, is explaining the why and getting the buy-in portion of the enablement piece. The part that I think gets confusing sometimes is when we start focusing on internals, we then have to interface with internal learning and development teams, right? And that can be challenging in a lot of different organizations because internal L&D may not be equipped to deal with product. Again, whatever your product is, we just happen to be SaaS, so that makes it, its own breed. But it could be widgets or plans or sterilizing equipment or whatever. And the process is still the same, right? We still need to make sure that our internal teams can speak to the details as well as a salesperson can. In some ways, right? They don't, accountants, it's not the same thing. But if you're at a get together of other accountants and somebody wants to know more about your business, what are you going to say?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We should all have that same talk track. And I think that's where customer education can be beneficial,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it can fulfill that role of identifying what's going on with new features and functionality and software or upgrades to the widget or why did we change the shape of this thing to be square instead of round? Or again, take your pick, right? But the why is what customer education in particular is very good at.
Mm-hmm.
And we should let them be good at that because they know that where those resources are and how to get at that information in ways that internal L&D would have to establish, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think too, in my experience, marketing teams will, they play a key role in this go-to-market play. But I think it's too easy for us to send a one-pager or CC the whole company on the product release email and say our job's done. Like, we did the enablement, we communicated internally, everybody now knows they're on the same page. And we know, an email does not education make, it's not intentional. And I think that's where education is thinking, really, what are we trying to achieve with this? It's not just communication for the sake of communication or keeping people in the loop, but we're actually thinking, what is it that you need to know? And how can I deliver that in a way that you can consume, absorb, internalize, and then go do something with it, whether that's problem solve if you're on a support team and help troubleshoot, or you can pitch it if you're a salesperson, or defend it if you're a customer success person and your customer's like, wait, why did my button go from square to round? If they, but they deal with so many weird things. And I think that's where education is so uniquely positioned, because they have this relationship with the product team, they're teaching on the product, but then they can also help us internally to understand, what is this change? Why is it being made? How am I supposed to be talking about it? How does this fit in with all this other information that I have when I'm talking about the product, especially if you're releasing something new and you're trying to fit it into the broader thing that your product does. How does that now fit into the bigger narrative that we've been trying to tell?
And I think that plays back out then to what happens at the customer level, right? When we're doing the basic GTM strategy to existing customers, the role of education is still very important in that play, because they're the people that will already know that information. It is certainly my role in customer marketing to communicate the message, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that the generation of some of that message is going to come and should come from customer education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that how we choose to disseminate that information from customer education is, of course, completely dependent on product and what your structure is already, right? Do you do a lot more things in written word through knowledge-based articles, or do you do live events, or is it ILT, VILT based kind of activity, right? I don't know that it matters. What matters is that there's a plan,
Mm-hmm.
and that plan then gets communicated through the
Mm-hmm.
marketing to the appropriate audience, whether that's internal or in the customer realm. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the important part, is to make sure that the effort for that is coordinated, right? That the customer marketing and customer education build that plan together,
Mm-hmm.
so that it disseminates properly, right? Because if either one of those tries to do the other one's job, it usually doesn't turn out well.
Mm-mm. No, you could end up with that knowledge base article that nobody knows exists, and no good CTA where you're just telling someone in an email, hey, we have this new feature. Okay, like what now? How do I do it?
What do I do with it
Right.
now? And
Yeah.
the next CTA on that is, let's learn more here, right? Click the button, register for a class, and we're good to go.
Learn more.
Right?
Be even typing my button. Learn more. What can I link to? Yeah, and so which makes me think, I've seen go-to-market play out so many ways, depending on whether there is a formal and well-established customer education function, or whether that is kind of residing a little bit more in the support team with those help articles. And that's kind of the extent of your customer education for this point in time. And then and I've seen where it's like dictated, hey, go create a help article or go create this video instead. But it sounds like what we should actually be doing is whoever is coordinating this go to market, usually product marketing, should be leaning on the expertise of the customer education person and using them as a consultant. Hey, this is what we're doing. Here's what people need to know. What do you think? Is this a video? Is this a help article? What's the best way to, like you said, disseminate this information, kind of teach people, share with people. And then the customer marketer says, okay, based on whatever that content is, how can I then serve that up to people? Who are the right people, right? Because I've done where,
how do we segment this best so that we can get it to the right people?
and speak to where they're at. So like, if they're currently using part of that feature, or they're not using that part of the product at all, right? Those are two different messages, and maybe what they need to know is different. Or even if you have kind of different personas who use your product, and so they need to know different things, right? Your person who's very much in the weeds of your product every day is different than someone who's only using your product for one thing, right? So we have a person who kind of manages our HubSpot, but then we have other people who are just maybe building an email with drag and drop editor. Those are two different people who, when a feature comes out, are going to need different levels of support, maybe learning about that new feature and implementing it.
And I think that's where again, customer education takes the lead, right? Because they can help understand that. We talk a lot now about the concept of microlearning, right? And how if we have a small enough component piece, we can leverage it in 100 different ways. And this is one of those places where that really can shine, right? It can be all of those things, right? It can be a knowledge-based article, a video, a live event, right? Where somebody does a cool demo of the new toys, and the split can happen at the role level, at the persona level, where we can say, end user type person, look at this, the new cool things, part of this bigger package. If you're not already using this bigger package, another CTA, you need to go out and figure out how to use that other part of the package and why it's important, because it is, if you're doing X, Y, and Z, right? And I think that's, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm even thinking let's say you have a new integration, you integrate with a another product, or another service. You have the communication for the admin, maybe of your product, who is getting the emails about the product updates, but then they probably need some more detailed documentation for their technical person or IT person who's setting up that. So it's how do you help them understand what all it can do, so they can say, oh, that would actually be really beneficial to our business, and then help them connect to the right resource for the person who's going to actually go do the work. And then so we still have those different personas in that product release, and they need different information at different levels.
And not forgetting that sometimes we have to remember to give people big pictures too, because sometimes the champions for us within an organization need to be able to speak to the same kinds of things, but they have to do it at a much higher level. So how are we going to tackle that audience as well, right? We sometimes forget that in the GTM strategy, we're not thinking about just the user learner person. We're thinking about all of those personas that need to interact with us. So I am arming my internal CSM to have discussions with the admins on feature functionality and lead them to training, while at the same time I am surfacing higher level content that we discuss at the quarterly business reviews with the executives, so that they can speak to how valuable our tool is becoming in their ecosystem, right? Kind of gives us a nice pathway of enhancing our product within the customer organization, which I kind of like, right? That's part of what I do, right? Customer marketing that's part of it, is getting into that under their skin, right?
I think to me, I think an underpinning philosophy for both customer marketing and customer education is, how do we help our customers be successful? And there's different ways that we do that, through education, training, enablement, but also through what you're talking about. How do we help them speak to the bigger picture? How do we help them look great to their boss? How do we help their company look like rock stars? I think all of that, right? And so we share that mission of helping our customers to be successful. We can do that in a variety of ways. And that gives us all these different types of content or educational pieces that we can use for these different audiences. But what it really makes me think is, like, customer education is, and I know this is an Adam Evermescu's definition of customer education, but it's a strategic function. It's not something, it should not be a department where what they're doing is dictated to them by other departments. And it should not be a department where they're just kind of like creating these things and it's not really part of the bigger thing. It's more that seat at the table of, we're talking about going to market, and they're bringing their consultative expertise to the table and saying, okay, if this is what we're trying to do, this is how we can achieve it, and allowing them to have that voice. And then we're really kind of almost bringing their education to market, right? We're bringing their education enablement to market. And that's the thing that we're actually delivering. Like the product is over here. I think sometimes we forget the way we serve our customers isn't just product. It's all this other stuff too. It's services, it's education, it's customer success, it's support. We have all these other ways, and we're really delivering that to the customer. And they really just have to be that strategic partner. It can't be separate. It can't be an afterthought. It can't be something where
Correct.
Someone's just assigning them a task in Asana and they're just creating a little video that someone puts in an email. It has to be something where they're involved in that, like they have that strategic seat at the table where they're saying, if this is what we're trying to achieve, this is what we can do. And I think just the elevation of education in the organization, really valuing what it brings to the table.
Completely agree with that. Let's carry that story though back through the enablement journey, right? We talk about customer education, and I'm hesitant to say customer enablement, right? Because I think customer education is different than enablement. I think that the why is there, and enablement doesn't always mean the why is as clear sometimes, and at least in my book. And if we take that enablement structure and we bring it inside again to those internal teams, so you just rattled off, right? Services is important. What happens with tech support? What happens with our CSMs? Anything that's part of that customer experience needs the same level of enablement that we give to sales, because they end up then becoming the cheerleaders for our product with the existing customer base. They're the ones that will end up tackling anything that people don't like about the product with the customer base, right? The first people that will see this will be, there's most likely the CSM or a support person, right, through a ticket. And so we need to be able to arm them with the tools and techniques and knowledge about this new toy, for example, so that they can have solid conversations about why things are behaving the way that they do, and what the reasoning is behind some of this, because there's always going to be somebody who didn't get the memo, who didn't get the training, who didn't get that piece. And so we're constantly having to explain again and again and again, sometimes again, the thought process, right? Why it's behaving this particular way. And everyone needs to have that same message, right? They need to be able to deliver that message almost exactly the same, right? Again, personal foibles aside, in terms of things like how you say things and how you choose to phrase it, but the message needs to be the same. And we can't do that if we're just throwing it out in an email or a blog, internal blog that says, read me once a month and that's it. We need to really focus, and again, using the teams that are best designed for that task. So I'm not trying to call on people to do something that's outside of their expertise, if that expertise already exists within the organization. It's different if you don't have a team, right, that does something. Like if you don't have customer education, I'm sorry, but you should.
Done it as a marketer, had to create education and enablement materials as a marketer, but that's not something that I think everybody can or does do, right? So then we end up with, just release notes, or just a product release digest email, and it's not really that. I think what you also brought up is there's many different channels that we're communicating on, and it's not just email, and it's not just an in-product, release note announcement. We need to consider our human channels, that these are people who are conveying that message, because you're right, average email is getting a 30 to 40% open rate. That means it's 60+% of your customers don't even know what you said,
Missed that one.
Yeah, and they X out of the product release tour that you put in the product. So you can do it from all these different angles, but you really like the people are the ones who are actually in real time going to be responding to their questions, and they're going to be the ones maybe defending the change or championing the change, helping them, get acclimated to the change. And so these channels are all great as maybe air cover and proactive communication, but we need to be prepared for those people who are maybe more reactively responding to customer questions about changes.
Completely agree. I say that a lot though when I talk with you. I say that a lot. So
I know, like we're like on the same page, but we also learn from each other. And I don't know how this is. Like it's just so. But this is why we do this, right? It's because
right.
I think there are times when you can listen to something and you're vigorously nodding your head because you totally agree, but you're still learning because everybody is thinking about it a little differently. Or sometimes you just hear someone saying something in a way you've never quite heard it before. Like with this, people may not have heard of go-to-market like this before. And I know, I mean, go-to-market is one of those terms that reminds me of The Princess Bride and Inconceivable. Like, I do not think that means what you think it means. It's just one of those words we use and we just don't know. What does that mean to you? And so this is an opportunity. Maybe we're expanding our definition and our interpretation of what go-to-market means to not just be a marketing plan, but also being an education
enablement and change management plan, right?
Oh, we need to have a whole episode on change
management.
Yeah,
we'll add that to the list. We'll add that to the list.
Basically underrated, always overlooked, but so important. All right, cap on it.
Okay, yeah. So before we get off on that tangent, this session we covered three things, right? We talked about what is the GTM, what does go-to-market mean for us, again, and I think the important thing there, right, is define it.
Yeah.
Make sure that everybody understands what it means within the organization, so that if you do have a product marketing team, their definition and your definition are, if not the same, very close. Right? Because we need to leverage, of course, a lot of the work that they do in what we do as we work through it. The second one is the roles that CE and CEMs play, right? Customer education and customer marketing are integral in the GTM for those audiences post-sale and our internal audiences, right? And then the third one is we do need internal enablement. You can't not have it. If you're going to do these other pieces, you need to enable all of the other teams to be able to do what they need to do as well. Right?
Totally. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, then next time, then we said we really kind of had to split this topic up, right? Because the whole concept of go-to-market can mean different things. So this time we tackled what it means as a product kind of to the right audience kind of thing. Next time, we're going to talk about the structure of customer education as product. And what does go-to-market mean in that circumstance instead? So we'll see you next time. Thanks.